Okay, well, welcome back. We got a beautiful Friday morning here. We are actually getting ready ourselves to have a little golf match, which I'm super excited for. It's going to be one of the last few of the season. And I bring that up because it's actually a little bit relevant to what we're going to be discussing today, which is a new game, actually, that you've crafted up as one of your many ideas. I'm not sure if there's a new total of ideas that you'd like to share. If
Actually, we're on idea number 150, and there are more to come. So that
Okay.
perhaps will be a topic for another episode, that in and of itself. But yes,
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 exactly.
this
So,
is an idea concept.
yeah, so we got plenty to talk about down the road here. But today, before we get into this new game, I want to talk about some of your kind of competitive nature. Because for those of you that don't know, this guy he can be a little bit crafty on most of these yard games, whether that's anything outside on a pool table, anything. So I guess where does that kind of come from for you? You definitely like to, you know, go for it and
Yeah,
talk a little bit,
I
all in good fun, of course.
I
But
only think of myself as a friendly competitor. I like to see other people win. I grew up, of course, in a pretty competitive environment. America by nature is competitive, right? You get to be the best, and but I've calmed down a little bit. But as I've grown older, but yes, who doesn't like to win? Let's put it that way.
no,
Who doesn't
that's
like to win at yard games, pool, cards, and also at business? That's
yes,
correct.
no, and
Let's
that's
get to the bottom line, if you will. So yes,
yes, and that friendly competition has often been grounds for a lot of productive discussion for us as well.
very
We
true.
have
Very true.
over in the other room over there, there's a nice, beautiful pool table, and alongside that is a piece of paper that's tracked close to 300 games or so, going back 4 or 5 years, and
Yeah.
obviously around the pool table, some of the discussions, honestly, that's kind of brought us to where we are at today.
Yeah, we won't talk about percentages of who's won to date, but yes, we have. It's interesting. We've been tracking pool games for a long time, and I think we talked about how many we hadn't tracked. Right, we began tracking it 4 or 5 years
Yeah.
ago, but I bet you we played 4 or 5 years prior to that. So it's fun.
Yes. Yeah. And
Yeah,
then the pool game, I think, even when I was just a young kid, I remember you pulling out the step stool, teaching me how to play. And that might be where I get some of my competitive roots from. That's
I could
kind of
be.
came in there. So,
Yeah, it could be. It's
yeah.
fun.
But no, I guess then another kind of thing, too, I want to mention is a big difference about this idea that we're going to talk about today is that this isn't something that you worked on in the past or somebody else has worked on in the past. This is an idea that's in kind of its infancy stages. I mean, how long would you say since you kind of thought of this idea? We don't need to go into the details yet. We'll get to that, but
Right, right. That's a good point. This is a real new direction
mhm.
for the podcast. Taking an actual idea, and I think we talked a little bit about taking the idea from kind of inception. So to answer your question, I put together a little format and for each idea,
Yep.
and began putting them into a standardized, what would you call it, format. That's a good word for it. This one actually originated July 1st of 2018 is when I actually
Okay.
notated the date. So that's quite some time, over
Yeah, I was
six
gonna say
years.
that's a little bit
Good
longer.
ideas take time.
Yeah, that's a little bit longer than I expected,
Is it?
honestly. But no, that's cool. And then that kind of comes up to another topic that we've talked about before, and we're kind of taking a little bit of a risk even here talking about this idea without really having any
Yes.
protection. So we're, I guess, putting a little bit of general faith in our audience here. But
Well, we're putting some faith in our audience, but let's step back for just a moment. And protection might be yet another episode.
uh,
There are many angles to these business development concepts. There is inherent protection by copyright. I'm not a lawyer, and a real lawyer would probably perhaps argue with me, but there are some protections afforded just by doing what we're doing, actually, I believe,
okay.
putting it out into the public. Um, as far as patents and trademarks go, that's a whole nother separate discussion on the legal field.
Yeah.
We will get into that at some point, and actually probably offer some aids to our viewers who
Mhm.
are going down these paths also in the future. So, but yes, we're taking a little bit of a risk sharing this idea with you.
Yeah.
Um, whoever's the fleet of foot to market, though, let them benefit, and
Yeah.
let's go.
Yeah.
So this is a fun one. I'm excited to talk about this. Let's roll.
Yeah. No, well, then, but just real quick, I
Oh
want to
yeah,
kind of talk about the spectrum of that mindset because we've brought up in the past
yes,
one of my inspirations, Mark Randolph, whose mindset as the founder of Netflix was always get your ideas out there into reality, get feedback from your customers. And then on the opposite kind of side of that, I've heard just hearsay of people saying, don't tell your ideas. Somebody will steal them. Somebody else is going to take credit for it. Somebody else is going to get rich off your idea. So you got to have it under lock and key. And then kind of in the middle of that, I remember when I was in one of my first like professional work experiences, I had kind of a mentor who kind of took the middle stance there. He told me basically anything kind of in the day to day, and this is more in like a corporate setting, which we've talked about having more of a dedicated episode to entrepreneurship in that setting. Because there's a lot of, I think, disruption and differences you can make if you have that mindset. But his stance was, if it's something general from the day to day operations, minor tweaks here and there, you want to bring that up right away, get that out there. Let it be known if somebody likes it, they'll kind of build the feedback, gain some momentum from there. And have some examples of times I've done that successfully with good results. But he said, on the other hand, though, if you got, well, what's the word, a unicorn idea or something like that, those are the ones maybe that you want to maybe hold a little bit closer to the belt. So obviously, there's no one right answer, but I guess this is something we've gone back and forth on. So maybe where do you think some of that fear comes from of wanting to hold your idea in?
well, there could be two possibilities. One would be fear of not getting rich, right? Fear of missing an opportunity. That's a good a reality. Some people are that way. The other might be fears of success. In other words, people sometimes can be afraid to succeed for some crazy reason, or fear of criticism. So maybe
Hmm.
some of those things. Now, what you were talking about, though, reminds me perhaps of an advanced product. So if something's advanced, already protected, and you have some market share, you're sort of
Hmm.
working on tweaking. What we have here is, as you said, almost embryonic, whatever. I hope it's a unicorn idea. Who knows? Somebody sitting out there might see this
Yeah.
and say, I want to buy in, which we're welcome to talk about.
Yeah.
So, but it may depend upon the concept. It may depend upon also how far you are along with it. So,
Hmm.
for example, if we're ready to uh, trademark this name concept, which we are, if we're ready to do prototypes, which we are, and future episodes will delve into these
Yeah.
things, we're probably a little farther along than someone
Hmm.
who might be watching this or might be inclined to steal. I hope our audience is honest and upright. Cut us in on it, would you?
Yeah,
Um,
that would be my main point. Is if you are inclined to make action on this idea, just let us know. We'd love to be involved, and we would love to think we have a little bit of value to bring to the table
lots
too.
of
If
value. We're
if
team
nothing
players.
else,
We're team
yeah, we'll
players. Okay.
we'll give you some competition.
So, but you make some really good points. You really do, or whoever this other guy was you mentioned makes some good points in terms of, get it out there, get it out there. Now, if you have something truly revolutionary, which it's arguable as to whether there is anything truly
Uh,
revolutionary. I mean, when Edison was working on the light bulb, I think a lot of other people were too.
yeah.
Great advances in technology, interestingly enough, are sometimes proceed simultaneously. That might be another episode. But if I'm not mistaken, I think someone patented a telephone, someone in England, the day before, or arguably the day around when Alexander Graham Bell patented it. Point being to the topic, let's move on it. Move on it.
Yeah.
Let's get some feedback. I want to
Yeah.
get this thing in the field being tested by people out there like you. And
Yes.
then we can begin a scoring method and see who's best.
And then, yeah, get a tournament and start playing for some cash. We'll see. That's down the road. So now we want to get into the idea itself, though. And again, this is something that we don't have any prototypes for. That's something we're excited to begin working on. And we'll talk about that in a second. But again, what we want to do is start from just our early thoughts of talking through this idea. What do we think the strengths and weaknesses are? And then we would love to, down the road, do some follow up episodes with actually getting it out into the hands of our target market, which sometimes is just our buddies, our neighbors, especially for this case, to see, is this worth playing? Do they like this over the traditional alternatives? But I think with that being said, let's start talking about this new game, Lightning. So I know it might be a little bit tough to kind of speak to visually, but yeah, I guess what is this new game that could disrupt the yard game market?
Well, disrupt is a big word. Basically, it is a bean bag toss type game. I don't want to necessarily say spin off, but perhaps an advancement, an evolution, an extension of,
Expansion, yeah.
yeah, of a very, very dull game out there
That
that
is dying for some
it needs some
innovation.
improvement. Let's be real honest here, and we've got it. Actually, it's interesting. Speaking of evolutions and variations and modifications that better meet the needs of people as times and people change, pickleball comes to mind.
Yeah,
So, you used to have tennis, run hard, play hard. You got to be a skinny guy like him to play
I
it.
don't know
As
about
you
that.
get older, it's harder. Well, pickleball has picked up from the standpoint of it's easier to play. It's in a smaller court
Yeah.
and more contained. In fact, I just read the other day that I think 10 or 15% of all tennis courts have been modified to accommodate pickleball. So this might be considered a parallel, if you will.
Yeah, I was
Um,
thinking about that same kind
yeah,
of, they're similar games, but one's kind of gotten a big kind of surge in participants. And I mean, just
very
driving
big.
down the road, you can't go too far without
Nope.
seeing people hearing that classic plastic noise
That noise,
that some
yes.
people love and some people hate. But
Some love
that's a
it, some
different
hate it.
topic.
That's exactly right. So there we have it. Is an interesting parallel. The foundation game that we're talking about, I guess we can say it,
Yeah.
is cornhole, right? So a lot of people like it. Um, I don't know what that. You know what cornhole would be? Perhaps as a derivative or an extension of horseshoes.
Yeah.
It has some advantages over horseshoes, and
Hmm.
what are they real quickly? Horseshoes is hard for ladies sometimes to play because you got a big heavy horseshoe.
Yeah.
We used to play horseshoes in our backyard, and the ladies would get an advantage, which they of course don't need in cornhole
Hmm.
because the weight of the beanbag is not prohibitive. Also, there's a couple other little things in terms of just the cleanliness factor, if you will. Anyone who's played horseshoes has gotten, dirt on their hands and so forth. So this is a much cleaner game. So would you agree that that's sort of an extension?
Yeah, no, I
Yeah,
would say, I mean, for sure, with the same setup, 2v2 teams, kind of the throwing back and forth. There's a
played
little
at
bit of
21, scoring
that
similar.
like random bouncing factor to keep it interesting, but definitely an undoubtable skill component, especially if I play and win.
Yeah, very, very true. Well,
So,
I don't know where the idea sort of originated.
yeah,
Ideas are a funny thing, and that'll be another episode in terms of where they come from. You get these aha moments. Perhaps you folks do too. You get an idea. I encourage you again to write it down as you move forward. I created a little a format which
yeah,
someday you'll be able to find on our website that you can utilize to sort of standardize your ideas and but get in the habit of writing them down. It's huge. So I
yeah,
wrote this down some time ago and I've added to it, by the way. So I created a little file for Lightning, which has the template in it and my notes. So as we're going along here,
yeah.
these are the types of things that we can improve upon.
So,
So
but
where do you want to go with
well, I
this?
guess for the game though, and
Okay.
I know a little bit about the concept, but just break down maybe the biggest differences with the existing game cornhole right now. I know
Okay.
there's maybe a little bit of more variable scoring, more different ways to score, but just and again, it would be tough without one
Some
images.
imagery. So basically, the concept of lightning originated from what I saw as some deficits in cornhole. Now, cornhole's a great game. Um, I don't even know how it's structured, but boy, someone has leveraged it to a very new level. If
Yeah.
I'm not mistaken, there might be cornhole scholarships
Yeah.
at the collegiate
I just
level.
saw, I was looking up cornhole before this, and there's a video game now for the Nintendo Switch, American Cornhole League. So it's definitely quite an established game out there. Yeah, I'm not sure a lot about the ownership of that.
I'm not either.
The cornhole boards that I have were homemade.
And there are professional ones in
Mhm.
different grades and qualities. And so when something becomes popular to that level, and you start getting sponsorship and viewership, standardization, tournaments and name recognition, obviously a lot comes with that in
Mhm.
terms of whatever you call it,
Yeah.
success and an accompanying revenue, shall we say. But so what I was kind of thinking was recently here in terms of some of the disadvantages, if you will, or downsides, not to slam cornhole because it is a fun game,
Yeah.
but first of all, the name. Now maybe that could be advantageous. That might be another episode where
It's easy to remember.
it's easy to remember and it conjures up certain images that are positive and or negative. But that was one of the things was lightning has a much better ring to it. So um, the other thing is, it's a little bit harder to transport. The boxes are a little
Mhm.
bit heavy. You can't just throw it in your trunk.
Yeah.
Whereas some of those things with lightning are intended to be addressed as we move forward. Sometimes too, the game I think can take a little bit too long.
Mhm.
Okay, that's a little bit of a disadvantage that we've tried to address. And for most players, it's scoring any points can be difficult. So we've tried to make Lightning a little bit more score friendly, and so as the name indicates, it,
Mm.
it would be quicker because
Yeah.
there are more scoring methods
Yeah,
and,
there's
and
nothing worse
options.
than, having five people playing, one person sitting out, and it's the slowest game. You're sitting there.
Precisely. That's precisely right. The other one is in terms of counting. Now, this is a big part of it. We'll have to talk about when we get into it further
Uh-huh.
in terms of how the scoring is maintained. We're thinking about an electronic variable that
Mhm.
would technologically, if you will, allow for the participants to not really even have to keep score on their own. Um,
That can sometimes be a point of heads butt a little bit. What was the score? Are you sure?
Remembering the score
I
can
think
be
I
a
was
challenge.
ahead.
Right, right. So
You're
we're
playing
looking,
for money.
yeah, we're looking at a built-in scoring tool on the side of the board itself, or possibly an electronic
Mhm.
scoring variable. But anyway, those were what drove this in a sense was that there are some limitations. I love cornhole; it's a lot of fun, but I think Lightning might have a broader, more
Yeah.
broad attraction, however you want to say that
So, but
grammatically.
from the way the game is played, though, I'm looking at the picture here. There's it looks pretty similar to a cornhole board, but with three holes, opposed to the traditional, cornhole. You land it on the board, it's 1 point. You make it in the hole, it's 3 points. This looks like it has three holes, kind of in line, kind of down the board in the direction that you'd be throwing. So would those be different point levels, or
That's
how
exactly
would
it.
you
It's
score?
exactly it. In fact, the original intent, and we're still in the process of finalizing this. So future episodes will show some testing
Yeah.
methods that we put together. But originally, it was intended to have three holes. The smaller hole at the top would be a 3 point score.
Mhm.
The middle hole, which would be slightly larger, would be worth two, and then the lowest would be even larger, which would be worth a single point. So on the board itself
So
would
kind of
be
similar to like that ladder toss game. I don't know the technical name
yes,
for that, where it's just different levels of scoring. There's more than just one or two kind of ways to score. And then would it be the same kind of partnered back and forth, playing to
precisely,
21? Obviously, still early, but just curious where you see that from the flow of the game.
precisely. We're looking at some different options there, and I don't know how it might end up. Some testing might help us
Yeah.
finalize certain details of it that will make it more fun. Um, but that was the intent was to make it quick, make it score a lot of points. Every point counts.
Mhm.
Um, and you hit 21, boom, you win it. Who's next?
Yeah.
Next game. So lightning is in a sense
The
the
quickness.
principle, the
Yeah.
speed, and yep, let's
And
keep
make
it
it more
rolling.
accessible if somebody, you're at a tailgate or whatever, somebody's maybe only there for 10 minutes. You don't even get a chance to play the cornhole game, but hey, we're playing this lightning game. It takes 2 minutes, maybe not two, but stop by here. I'll I'll show you how to play real quick, and then they can walk over to the next table. Hey, these guys have this
There you
cool
go.
game. They're disrupting the cornhole market.
Yeah,
I think they got a podcast about it.
I
No.
love it. Yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah,
That's into the marketing end of it, which is fantastic.
yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of it. Is three scoring opportunities of increasing levels. Now we're looking at the board design. We were thinking of possibly using the
Existing
existing
shape.
rectangular shape
Yeah.
and possibly modifying it to make it a little more challenging. So, in other words, there's a risk reward component
Yeah.
if it narrows near the top.
Uh-huh.
And we're going to test this moving forward. And
Yeah.
you're going to be
And
a part of this. And we need your feedback moving forward.
so yeah, that calls out, I think, a big advantage of the idea like this, and it reminds me a little bit of your initial prototyping with pistachios. You were kind of just hungry for a snack. You were getting ready to go golfing, throwing in a little Ziploc bag, and
Hmm.
with this game, you can kind of do the same. I guess it would take a little bit of craftsmanship with some woodworking, but you don't have to go out and program something on a new website to have some technological feature. We could by the end of the day today, if we wanted to, if we weren't golfing, of course, we could go over to our neighbor's workbench, and if we had the materials, we could build something like this soon. So that's something I'm really attracted to about this idea. And even that first prototype is going to be something that we could test out, and like we've been talking about, get feedback on. Hopefully we can craft our skills a little bit so some adjustments can be made. But that's, again, I think something really strong about this is going to be the ability to test it. And for somebody to play a game, it's not, hey, can you fill out this survey about this new banking application that somebody might otherwise be using their free time to play games or whatever. This can be in that kind of setting where you're not really doing, you're just kind of hanging out. So those are a couple things that I like about the concept of testing this and getting it out into the hands of the people. So what are your plans though, to kind of test this out? Do you have any thoughts besides just making a sample and getting into the hands of some potential customers?
Yes, we have. I say we. I do have a couple people who are inclined to help with this, and we're going to build some prototypes, and we're going to build a couple different prototypes. To be honest with you, we're even considering, and you got to be able to pivot. You got to be flexible in these
Mm-hmm.
things. I thought the other night maybe two holes would make more sense. So just so you know, we're gonna, and you'll be with us along the way. We're gonna test a couple options, a couple design variables, and see what kind of sticks. But the primary purpose of it was to increase the skill, the scoring level based on some risk. So I like the triangular method of the
Mm-hmm.
3 points is up at the top. If you're aiming for 3 points, there's a good chance, more of a chance you're going to list.
Yeah, margin
Yeah.
for there.
But to your point, yes, it's not super high tech unless it gets into a very large
Yeah,
production
like some
method.
injection molding, plastic, and
Yeah,
heavy capital. But
the electronic scoring would be a neat one.
yeah,
The capability exists, but like most things, everything is volume
yeah,
driven and cost related. You know that as well
yes.
as
And then
anyone.
that's, again, you wouldn't, in my opinion at least, you wouldn't want to start with going for the electronic scorekeeping. And that's, again, why we, I guess, are kind of pushing for people to begin sharing their ideas, because we could go spend $200,000 developing a custom made electronic scorekeeper. But if people don't like the game itself, then,
Right.
it's,
That's a good point.
kind of the value is lost there. So,
Yep, let's get some prototypes. In that next episode, we'll show the prototypes,
yeah.
perhaps. We're working still on finalizing some details in
Hmm.
terms of the rules. To your point, much of those details may fall into place through some field testing.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's a good point. So
Yeah.
don't hesitate to move on it. Get your idea written down, put your thoughts together, get a little folder together,
Hmm.
go out to our website for tips, and move on it.
And you talked about that too. I mean, with the rules kind of adapting. I mean, I think a lot about the game Spike Ball, which is another kind of, it's not even necessarily an expansion of any existing game. It's almost in a world of its own. But as the sport's grown, honestly grown from a game to a sport, really, they've had to adapt the rules as people get more familiar with the strategies and new techniques come out. But that's even happening in, look at baseball with the pitch clock. I mean, the rules and
True.
stuff are adapting. So,
True.
they're not going to stop the Major League Baseball playoffs to test out a new, they're not going to do a season where it doesn't count. So that's, again,
Good
kind of
point.
another point to just kind of begin testing, and nothing's final.
Nothing's final. That's a really
You can
good
always
point. What
adjust.
did they change with football? The kickoff
The
line.
kickoff
Now that's a big
completely.
debatable. Yeah,
Yeah,
big
I'm not
debatable.
sure.
But
Definitely looks a little funky when you're
yeah,
seeing the typical kickoff. But again, there was a need, or some opportunity they saw, and they went ahead and executed.
yeah.
So
To that point about baseball too, the mound used to be level with the batting
yeah.
surface, and I think they raised it. Don't be afraid to test it. And you're gonna join us in this testing method. It's gonna be fun.
Mhm. Okay, so no, I think that did a good job of outlining a little bit about what the game is all about, some of the um, you know needs maybe that you're looking to meet with this new Lightning game. I want to talk about some of the obvious obstacles and maybe some thoughts on how we can, address them, or at least be conscious of them as we move forward. So the big one, I think, is the cult. Maybe cult might be a little bit of a brash term, but cornhole obviously has a big dedicated fan base. You can watch it on TV now. Like I said, there's a video game. So um, what do you see as kind of some of the keys for adoption with this new idea as we go into prototyping?
Wow, there's a lot of thought in what you just said. It is certainly true. It may take some time. It will take
Hmm.
some time. In fact, I think pickleball, going back to pickleball, I think originated back in maybe the 70s even.
Yeah,
So, you need to have a long timeline, but you also do need to move. You need to
yeah,
move quickly. Biggest obstacle, frankly, is our own limitations, perhaps on time and initiative.
yeah,
So let's get excited about it.
yeah,
Let's get some feedback. It's a funny thing. Once you get people involved, there's a chemistry, there's a dynamic, there's an electricity that can be generated, and a momentum. I remember reading about different businesses in the past, throughout history and so forth. They reach like a critical mass almost, where it's like, wow, this is really neat.
yeah. Gets
And
to a point, and the snowball effect.
snowball effect. So, I see that as a big obstacle. Is just the fact that if we were to do nothing, put this on, in the dustbin, and,
Hmm.
and maybe come back to it in a year and say, oh well, let's talk more about
Yeah.
lightning. So we really need to get to it, get it tested, get
Hmm.
some people that we know who like these kinds of games. Be real honest, by the way, too.
Yeah.
Because cornhole, as you
Yeah.
point
Because
out, does
I
have
mean,
a
potentially you might play the first game and be like, I had this was a good idea. Maybe it doesn't flow as well as you think. Maybe you realize, there's a reason they play the game the way they do, or maybe you find a couple new rules through testing that make it a stronger idea, more of a competitive game. And with the low, like we talked about, that low initial investment of some plywood and some tools we already have. I mean, the worst case scenario is you lose a couple hours, play a few games with your friends that you're going to be playing anyways. So that's, again, what I like about the idea. It's a fun concept, and
yes.
in general, I think there's a pretty big demand for these kind of games that, at a surface level, it might not seem super deep, but when you bring in the camaraderie aspect, and I think, like we said, we talked about playing our games of pool, euchre tournaments where you meet new people, create lasting bonds, and maybe do some business networking along the way too. I think are just kind of a couple of things that give this, maybe give this market more strength than people would realize at face value.
Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. Talking about obstacles, there are different obstacles you might face, which brings you sort of maybe perhaps to the purpose. Is our purpose to make this a new national or worldwide game concept trend? That might be fun. That might be neat.
It's a good
Uh,
North Star to have, maybe,
yeah, it
but
is. Is it the next cornhole, or pickleball, or whatever you want to think?
yeah,
Um, that is nice to dream
yeah,
about. It's unlikely, but who knows? But the other thing is, we can just have some fun with it. So, like you said, if it really doesn't go anywhere, maybe it hangs up on the wall, and
Yeah.
sort of like pistachio nuts, someday you can say, hey, that was my idea.
Yeah.
So that's another reason perhaps for you guys to just try it,
Yeah.
make it happen. What's the worst that can happen? People criticize you, or it's what, a big flop?
Yeah.
Well, what's a big flop to somebody isn't necessarily a big flop to
Yeah.
us, because hey, we're having fun with it. So,
Yeah.
depends what our
Exactly.
goals are. So
Yeah. No, I mean that's a great mindset to look at. This topic from low risk, potentially, infinite reward, and if we have fun along the way, that's all that matters. But I'm excited to see what you come up with in terms of a prototype. I'm excited to hopefully help out and be a part of some of those first few wins, hopefully, of the game, and continue our friendly competitive nature. But is there
yes.
anything else that you would like to share about this idea? I think we talked a little bit about it, and again, would love to be able to show a little bit more of kind of how the game is played. But definitely, thanks for walking me through it.
Thank you for bringing it up. I don't think I have anything more to add other than looking forward to working through the different stages of taking an idea
Hmm.
to fruition, shall we
Yeah,
say, to reality. And looking forward to you joining us,
yeah,
because we're going to have some fun with it. We're going to learn along the way. Um, some of the principles that we talk about are applicable to pretty much any business, whether it's
yeah,
a sophisticated online or phone banking app, or whether it's a simple yard game,
hmm,
or whether it's a simple nut combination,
yeah,
or a simple computer
yeah.
company.
Or
So
a simple process in your day to day work that annoys you every day when you have to do it. We're not always, I guess we're not always trying to give perspective for a brand new idea because we know that that's not everyone's inclination. So that mindset, I guess, is the bigger picture from where we see.
well, it's truly an American mindset,
Hmm.
and we're so fortunate to be here at this moment in time, and have the resources and the ability and the freedom to pursue these ideas. I don't want to get too philosophical,
No.
but by gosh, we're lucky. So act on your ideas.
Yes. And
Let us in on it through
I
our
was gonna say,
website.
like
Yeah,
always,
like
if
us.
anything that we're talking about strings a chord, if you got any interest, we would absolutely love to talk more about it. We'd love to, as always, just exchange ideas and hopefully strengthen them. And we see everyone getting value out of that. So thank you, though.
Thank you.
We'll see you
Till
again
next time.
soon.
Thank you.